Imagine reaching into a forgotten drawer, a faint clink of metal, and pulling out what looks like an ordinary $50. Its surface, dulled by decades of quiet circulation, bears the familiar profile of President John F. Kennedy, noble, resolute, eternal. But what if that same coin, the 1974 Kennedy $50 without a mint mark, wasn't just change, but a silent fortune? What if a small, unassuming disc of copper and nickel could hold a market value exceeding $600,000? It sounds like a myth whispered in collectors' circles, but the truth is far more fascinating. The story of the 1974 no-mint mark Kennedy $50 isn't just about metal, rarity, or money. It's about legacy. It's about how a single oversight at the United States Mint could transform an everyday coin into an object of obsession. A time capsule from a divided America still mourning its fallen leader. Let's step back to 1974, a turbulent year. The Watergate scandal was unraveling the public's trust. Gas prices were surging, inflation was biting, and Americans were quietly retreating to familiar symbols of strength. Among them, the face of John F. Kennedy, immortalized on the nation's $50 since 1964. The Kennedy $50 was meant to be a symbol of hope and remembrance. Yet by 1974, the coin had largely disappeared from everyday use. Banks had stockpiles. Americans hoarded them as keepsakes rather than currency. So when the U.S. Mint began producing that year's coins, few noticed that something peculiar was happening deep within the Philadelphia facility. Philadelphia coins traditionally bear no mint mark. But in the world of numismatics, the absence of a mint mark can sometimes mean far more than the presence of one. That subtle omission, or misplacement, can turn a common coin into a national mystery. Here's where things take an intriguing twist. Most Kennedy $50 struck in 1974 from Philadelphia were standard issues, copper-nickel clad, abundant, and widely distributed. But hidden among them, certain coins show characteristics inconsistent with typical Philadelphia strikes. Planchet variations, unusual die alignment, and an almost proof-like sheen suggesting they may have been experimental or test strikes, never meant for public release. Some experts argue these rare no-mint mark examples were accidentally released during a transitional phase in minting technology. Others whisper of intentional test strikes escaping the mint, smuggled out by workers or mistaken for normal circulation pieces. Whatever the origin, collectors began to notice anomalies. A few sharp-eyed numismatists, those with the patience to study under magnification and the heart to chase whispers of rarity, discovered that certain 1974 Kennedy $50 possessed an otherworldly luster, deeper strike, and an absence of any mint signature. One such specimen surfaced in the mid-2000s, authenticated, certified, and auctioned. The hammer price stunned the market, $631,000. To the untrained eye, that coin looks no different from one you might receive in change at a diner. But to the trained collector, it's a masterpiece of accident and preservation, the numismatic equivalent of a lost Rembrandt found in a thrift store. Now pause for a moment. What's the true value here? Is it the metal, the grade, the error, or is it the story? You see, the psychology of collecting rare coins is driven not only by rarity, but by romance, the human desire to possess a fragment of mystery. A no-mint mark, Kennedy $50 from 1974, isn't merely a coin. It's a symbol of defiance against time. It says, "You overlooked me once. Not again." Numismatics has always thrived on such paradoxes. The market moves in cycles. What's overlooked one decade becomes gold in the next. We saw it with the 1913 Liberty Head nickel, the 1943 bronze Lincoln cent, the 1969 S doubled die cent. Each one was born from human error and elevated by human curiosity, and just like those legends, the 1974 no mint mark $50 sits at the intersection of accident and destiny. Here's a question that might haunt you. How many of these coins are still out there, hidden in drawers, tucked in jars, resting in inherited collections, mistaken for ordinary halves? Coin experts estimate that fewer than a handful exist in pristine, collectible condition, but the exact number is uncertain. And that uncertainty is what fuels both fear and fascination. The chase becomes personal. Every roll of half-dollars, every old bank box, every estate auction becomes a potential revelation. Think about that for a moment. Somewhere in America right now, a coin worth hundreds of thousands could be resting inside a child's piggy bank. But here's where the story deepens. The collector community has learned to respect the power of provenance, the journey of a coin from mint to market. A 1974 no-mint mark Kennedy half-dollar authenticated by a major grading service like PCGS or NGC carries immense prestige, not just because of its grade, but because of the documentation, the paper trail that tells where it came from, who found it, and how it survived. Collectors, especially those in the 30 to 65 range, often describe this pursuit not as a hobby, but as a calling. They're historians, detectives, and dreamers rolled into one. Each rare coin is a whisper from the past, urging them to look closer, to question what's ordinary. Now imagine what happens when a coin like this enters the auction stage. The air changes. Bidders grow silent. The room tightens. Every collector feels that mixture of adrenaline and reverence, the sensation that history itself is under the hammer. The 1974 no-mint mark Kennedy half-dollar represents more than a monetary value. It's a mirror reflecting the soul of the American collector, someone who sees potential where others see pocket change. And here's the fascinating irony. Many of the greatest coin discoveries have been made not by professional dealers, but by ordinary Americans, retirees, hobbyists, even curious children. In this world, knowledge is the real currency. Those who study minting variations, die errors, and strike characteristics hold an invisible advantage. So what should you look for if you happen to find a 1974 Kennedy half-dollar in your collection? First, inspect the obverse, the portrait of Kennedy himself. On rare no-mint mark varieties, the details of the hair and jawline are unusually sharp, with deeper relief. The fields may appear mirror-like, as if the coin were a proof struck under higher pressure. On the reverse, the eagle's feathers and shield may show fine definition beyond typical circulation strikes. And, of course, there will be no small letter D or S, no Denver or San Francisco mint mark, below Kennedy's neck. But don't let your eyes deceive you. Counterfeits exist and modern forgeries have grown increasingly sophisticated. Only authentication by professional graders can determine the true lineage and legitimacy of a potential fortune. And yet, even in this age of digital markets and instant appraisals, the thrill of the hunt remains analog, tactile, emotional, intimate. It's the weight of the coin in your palm, the sound it makes when it falls on a wooden table, the whisper in your mind saying, "Could this be the one?" Every serious collector knows that feeling, the blend of curiosity and hope that ignites when holding an unexamined coin. That feeling has launched entire legacies. It has built fortunes, inspired families, and preserved stories across generations. Because in truth, coins like the 1974 no-mint mark Kennedy half-dollar are not just investments. They are vessels of time. Each carries the imprint of a moment when America was redefining itself, when faith in institutions wavered. Yet symbols like Kennedy's image endured as beacons of optimism. Owning such a coin isn't merely about wealth. It's about stewardship. The duty to protect something rare, something meaningful, something that connects us to who we once were. Let that idea settle in. The next time you sift through your collection or handle an old roll from the bank, remember this. The rarest treasures rarely announce themselves. They hide in plain sight, waiting for the eyes that truly see, and maybe, just maybe, that unmarked half-dollar resting in your possession carries a story that's been waiting 50 years to be told. Because in the quiet world of numismatics, fortune doesn't shout. It whispers, and for those who listen closely enough, a single coin can change everything. So ask yourself, could your next discovery be the one worth $631,000? Or more? The answer, as every collector knows, is always maybe. And that maybe, that glimmer of possibility, is the heartbeat of the hobby. It's what keeps us searching, learning, and dreaming. Because every coin has a story, but only a few like the mysterious 1974 no-mint mark Kennedy half-dollar, have the power to rewrite history itself. And that, dear listener, is the true value of a coin. Not the number written on a price chart, but the timeless spark it ignites in those who dare to look closer. Yes, a 1989 Kennedy half-dollar from the Philadelphia Mint, a coin so deceptively common that millions passed through vending machines, casino trays, and pocket change. Yet one of them, a single shimmering survivor in flawless condition, stunned the numismatic world when it surfaced, its market value soaring beyond $627,000. But how could a late 20th century coin, made mostly of copper and nickel, reach such astronomical heights? The answer is buried in history, minting errors, collector psychology, and the delicate line between the ordinary and the extraordinary. In 1989, America stood at a crossroads. The Berlin Wall was collapsing, the Cold War was fading, and optimism hummed through the nation's veins. Yet deep in the vaults of the Philadelphia Mint, presses thundered, stamping out millions of half-dollars bearing the familiar profile of President John F. Kennedy, the same heroic gaze that had adorned the denomination since 1964. To most, these were just coins. To a few, those who understand the subtle art of rarity, they were potential time capsules. Because each year, among the sea of mass-produced currency, a few anomalies slip through, a misaligned strike, an unintentional proof, a missing mint mark, or a metal composition slightly outside standard tolerances. The 1989 issue, in particular, carried a mystery. While most of these coins were ordinary circulation strikes, a limited number, perhaps fewer than a dozen, were produced with nearly proof-like surfaces, mirror fields reflecting light like polished glass. Some experts believe these were test strikes or experimental pieces that somehow escaped into circulation. Others think they might have been part of a special run, a quiet nod to the 25th anniversary of Kennedy's coinage design the following year. Whatever their origin, their perfection defied explanation. Here's what made this coin so legendary. A single 1989 Philadelphia Kennedy half-dollar, graded MS-68 by PCGS, achieved a sale price of over $627,000 in private auction. To put that in perspective, the same coin in MS-65 might be worth just a few $100s. That's the cruel and thrilling arithmetic of numismatics. One microscopic flaw can cut a coin's value by 99%. But let's pause. Why would anyone pay more for a coin minted in the millions? Because collectors, especially serious investors, aren't just buying metal, they're buying miracles. You see, in the world of rare coins, perfection isn't a standard. It's an accident of fate. Most coins are born into chaos. They're stacked, struck, bagged, and shipped without mercy. They collide with one another, pick up nicks, lose luster. But a few, a precious few, survive untouched, protected perhaps by chance, perhaps by destiny. And when one of those survivors resurfaces decades later, it's as if time itself has preserved a relic of American history. That emotional gravity, the feeling that you've uncovered a living artifact, is what drives collectors to astonishing bids. But there's another layer to this story. 1989 wasn't supposed to be special. No commemorative issue, no silver content, no dramatic redesign. Yet that's exactly why this half-dollar has become so intriguing. It challenges the assumption that only the oldest coins hold real value. Many collectors focus on 19th century rarities, the Morgan silver dollars, the early Liberty designs, the Civil War cents. But the modern era holds its own hidden treasures. And the 1989 Kennedy is proof that the Mint's quiet years can sometimes produce its loudest legends. Think of it as a numismatic paradox. The rarer the perfection in an ordinary coin, the higher its symbolic value. It's not just about scarcity. It's about improbability. Have you ever wondered why people chase coins at all? For most, it starts with curiosity, a childhood fascination. But for the serious investor, it becomes something deeper. Coins represent permanence. In a world where markets crash and currencies change, a well-preserved coin from the U.S. Mint becomes an anchor, a tangible piece of trust. That's why seasoned collectors are watching modern coins more closely than ever. As older rarities become unobtainable, attention shifts to unexpected places. The late 20th century mintage, transitional errors, experimental strikes. The 1989 Kennedy half-dollar sits right at the heart of this movement, a bridge between nostalgia and modern wealth building. It's more than metal, it's memory. Let's take a closer look at its anatomy. Each half-dollar from that year was composed of 75% copper and 25% nickel, bonded to a pure copper core. On its obverse, the youthful yet resolute face of President Kennedy, a design by Gilroy Roberts, radiates idealism. On the reverse, Frank Gasparo's heraldic eagle spreads its wings, clutching arrows and olive branches, a symbol of strength balanced by peace. For most, this was everyday pocket change. But the rare MS-68 example gleamed differently. Under magnification, its surfaces revealed a flawless satiny texture. No contact marks, no friction, no fingerprints. Just a pure metallic sheen untouched since the moment it left the die. Experts speculate that its die pair was new, freshly polished and retired early. Perhaps it was struck for internal quality checks, or accidentally preserved before being bagged with the rest. That tiny deviation, that single twist of fate, transformed an otherwise ordinary coin into a national treasure. And yet, even among collectors, few know the full story. For decades, the 1989 Kennedy half-dollar was overlooked. Banks stopped circulating halves in large quantities. They became novelty pieces given as gifts or tucked into drawers. Most people never even saw one again after the early 90s. That scarcity in circulation fueled mystery. Every time a collector uncovers a pristine example, speculation surges. Could this be the next six-figure find? And here's the thing, it's not impossible. Unlike many rare coins that exist only in museums, the 1989 halves are still out there, in forgotten rolls, inherited collections, or sealed mint sets bought decades ago and never opened. Somewhere, in a safe deposit box or an attic in Ohio or Oregon, another immaculate example might be waiting. That's what makes this story electrifying. The treasure isn't locked behind glass. It could be sitting in your possession right now. But before you rush to check your coin jar, here's the truth the market doesn't always reveal. Condition is everything. A half-dollar that looks shiny to the naked eye might still grade only MS-63 or MS-64. Respectable, but far from rare. The elite MS-68 specimen achieved its astronomical price precisely because it was perfect. Not nice, not clean. Perfect. To reach that level, it must survive more than 3 decades without the slightest blemish. The coin's strike must be sharp, the luster unbroken, the fields flawless. Even the tiniest tick visible under magnification can mean a difference of hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's the knife's edge that defines true numismatic fortune, a delicate boundary between pocket change and prestige. Now, here's where things get fascinating for investors. Over the past decade, the market for modern rarities has evolved dramatically. Once dismissed by traditionalists, post-1970s coins are now commanding record-breaking prices at auction. The logic is simple. As vintage pieces become financially out of reach, collectors seek new classics, coins from the late 20th century that embody the same rarity principles but are still attainable. The 1989 Kennedy half-dollar is the poster child for this trend. It represents the idea that the next great discovery doesn't have to be ancient, it just has to be exceptional. And perhaps that's the lesson hidden in this story. Every coin tells 2 stories, one about its creation and one about its rediscovery. The first is mechanical, the press, the metal, the mint mark. But the second is human, the eyes that spot its brilliance, the hands that preserve it, the heart that recognizes its meaning. When collectors chase these hidden gems, they're not just buying history, they're making it. Each rare find reshapes the narrative of American coinage, proving that even in a modern era, mystery still exists. The 1989 Kennedy half-dollar reminds us that value is not always about age or silver content. Sometimes, it's about survival against impossible odds. So ask yourself, what if you've already held one of these treasures without realizing it? What if your father's coin box, or that dusty roll in the back of your desk drawer, hides a pristine piece of numismatic history worth a life-changing sum? It sounds like fantasy, until it isn't. Every major discovery starts with one person who bothered to look closer. That's the quiet power of this hobby, the thrill of the hunt, the whisper of possibility, and the understanding that sometimes the most valuable things in life are the ones we've already touched. We just didn't know it yet. If this story teaches anything, it's this: never underestimate the ordinary, because hidden in those stacks of half-dollars and forgotten mint sets lies not just metal, but meaning, a bridge to our nation's past, a reflection of its craftsmanship, and perhaps your next legacy. So the next time you see the familiar profile of President Kennedy glinting in the light, take a closer look. It might not just be 50 cents. It could be the half-dollar that history forgot and fortune remembered, because in the world of numismatics, the line between pocket change and priceless artifact is thinner than a single strike of the die, and the next great discovery might already be in your hands. It sounds impossible, almost absurd, yet within the world of numismatics, impossibility often hides behind an ordinary shine. Because buried within the coinage of 1990 lies a mystery, a quiet whisper from the U.S. Mint that few have ever heard, and even fewer have profited from. The Kennedy half-dollar, born in the grief of 1964, has always carried more than silver and copper in its core. It carries the weight of memory, the echo of a nation mourning a fallen president. Collectors have always felt that emotion, the dignity in its design, the enduring symbolism of leadership cut short. But as the decades rolled forward, something curious happened. Production of the half-dollar declined, slipping into obscurity. By 1990, the coin had largely vanished from circulation. Most Americans stopped noticing it entirely, and that's where the opportunity began. You see, in 1990, at the Philadelphia Mint, the very heart of American coinage, a small run of Kennedy half-dollars left the presses. Millions were struck, yes, but among them, according to several coin grading experts and quiet whispers from private collectors, a handful were unlike the rest. Some showed minute die doubling on Kennedy's profile, a subtle doubling of the letters in Liberty, or the word trust. Others displayed a misalignment so faint that only under magnification could it be seen. And a few were struck on planchets meant for other denominations, minting errors so rare that their existence bends the logic of minting itself. Now here's where it gets fascinating. For decades, these peculiar 1990 Kennedy half-dollars passed unnoticed. Banks rolled them. Cashiers counted them. Children used them in vending machines. But collectors, the ones who live with magnifying glasses and intuition, began to notice patterns. Certain specimens, those bearing the P mint mark of Philadelphia, showed characteristics that made experts pause. Then came the shock. At a 2024 private auction, a 1990 Philadelphia Kennedy half-dollar, authenticated, graded Mint State 68 by a leading grading service, sold for over $624,000. Let that sink in. A 50-cent piece. Struck in copper nickel, not silver or gold, commanding a value higher than many luxury homes. What makes it so valuable? The answer, like most truths in numismatics, lies in a web of scarcity, human emotion, and timing. In the world of coin collecting, rarity isn't always about how few coins exist. It's about how few survive in exceptional condition, untouched by circulation, preserved by accident or foresight. The 1990 Kennedy half-dollar was produced in high numbers, but few people bothered to save them. Why would they? The coin was seen as mundane, ordinary, and that's exactly why today, pristine examples are nearly impossible to find. But scarcity alone doesn't tell the full story. This coin also represents a turning point, a bridge between the bold silver issues of the 1960s and the modern, nearly forgotten half-dollars of today. It's a symbol of changing times in American money, the slow fade of coinage from our daily lives. Collectors sense that. They feel nostalgia for an era when change jingled in our pockets, when each coin felt like a piece of the nation's history, not just metal. That emotional connection, combined with genuine scarcity and market demand, creates what experts call numismatic momentum. And momentum, when fueled by desire, can make prices soar beyond logic. But here's the question that keeps collectors awake at night. How many of these extraordinary 1990 Kennedy half-dollars are still out there? No one knows. Coin dealers report isolated finds. Estate sellers whisper about unusual strikes hidden in old collections. Online forums buzz with speculation. One collector from Ohio claims he discovered a near-perfect specimen in a family coin jar, an uncirculated half-dollar with razor-sharp details and a luster like liquid silver. He sent it for grading. Weeks passed. Then came the email, MS-67. That single grade transformed a forgotten 50-cent coin into a 5-figure asset overnight. It's moments like these that fuel the psychology of collectors. Beneath the magnifying lamps and velvet trays lies a deeper pursuit, not just of wealth, but of legacy, because a rare coin isn't merely an investment. It's a time capsule. A tangible link between past and present. Think of it. Every Kennedy half-dollar struck in 1990 came off presses in the year the Hubble Space Telescope was launched, the same year the Cold War began to thaw. The metal in your hand has witnessed every moment since, recessions, recoveries, technological revolutions. It's history that endures quietly, unaffected by inflation or politics. That permanence gives collectors something more powerful than profit. Connection. But let's return to the mystery. How could a modern coin like this, produced by the millions, reach a market value over $500,000? The key lies in provenance and perfection. When grading services assign the coveted MS-68 or higher designation, they're certifying not just a coin's condition, but its story, flawless surfaces, crisp strikes untouched by human hands. Only a handful ever achieve that level. And when one does, the market erupts. Investors rush in, driven by both curiosity and fear of missing out. That subtle anxiety that maybe, just maybe, someone else will claim the next treasure before they do. And as demand rises, rarity transforms into legend. It's happened before. The 1964 D peace dollar, rumored for decades, became a mythic artifact of American minting. The 1974 aluminum Lincoln cent from Denver, another whisper of impossibility, turned heads when it surfaced. Each time, disbelief gave way to awe, and fortunes followed. The 1990 Philadelphia Kennedy half-dollar now occupies that same numismatic twilight zone, a modern coin with ancient allure, and the lesson for collectors is clear. Never dismiss the ordinary, because in the quiet hum of mint machinery, errors happen. Unique specimens slip through unnoticed. And when they do, they rewrite history. Here's a pattern interrupt for you. Something that will make you check your own collection tonight. Some 1990 Kennedy half-dollars exhibit a strange anomaly, a missing mint mark. Yes, a Philadelphia coin without the P. Such pieces shouldn't exist, yet authenticated examples have surfaced, baffling experts. A mechanical oversight? Or deliberate testing strike? No one can say for certain. But those coins, even in circulated condition, have fetched thousands. Imagine if one sat hidden in a family album, pressed between yellowed newspaper clippings from the Kennedy. Years, forgotten, waiting. That possibility, that electric. What if is what drives every serious collector. Because numismatics isn't just about accumulation. It's about discovery. The thrill of unveiling something history itself overlooked. And every time a rare coin surfaces, the story begins anew, an inheritance of curiosity passed from one generation to the next. That's why so many collectors today see coins not only as assets, but as vehicles of legacy. A 1990 Philadelphia Kennedy half-dollar, in its immaculate state, may appreciate in value, but its true worth lies in what it represents: discipline, foresight, and the courage to look closer when others look away. Let's be honest. In today's world, Where digital currencies flicker across screens and cash fades from use, coins like this feel almost mythological, tangible relics of a nation that once built its economy on metal and trust. Perhaps that's why collectors aren't just investors. They're historians, preservationists, storytellers. They understand that wealth isn't only measured in dollars, but in stories saved from oblivion. And what story could be more poetic than that of a 1990 Kennedy half-dollar struck in anonymity, ignored for decades, only to rise as one of the most valuable modern coins in American history? There's one more twist before we close. Some analysts believe the $624,000 auction price was only the beginning. With renewed interest in modern rarities, advanced imaging technology, and social media exposure, experts predict values could continue to climb, perhaps even doubling within the decade. But here's the real insight. The next six-figure coin may not even be this one. It could be sitting right now, unnoticed, in a roll at your local bank, or in the back of a relative's coin drawer. Every time you hold a coin from that era, 1990, Philadelphia Mint, Kennedy half-dollar, look closer. The secrets are microscopic, but the rewards are monumental. Because in the quiet gleam of a forgotten coin lies a story of American resilience, of craftsmanship, memory, and chance. What began as a 50-cent tribute to a fallen president has become a beacon for collectors who believe that history still hides treasures in plain sight. So next time you feel the weight of a half-dollar in your palm, remember this: value is never just about metal or mint marks. It's about the unseen, the patience to look deeper, the wisdom to preserve, and the courage to believe that something ordinary can still change your life. Somewhere, right now, a 1990 Philadelphia Kennedy half-dollar sits unnoticed, glinting faintly in the dark. Its owner has no idea. Maybe it's in a cash register, maybe in an attic, or maybe it's in your collection. And when it finally surfaces, its story will begin again. Another chapter in America's silent treasure hunt, where the past whispers through metal and fortune favors the curious. A 1992 Kennedy half-dollar struck at the Denver Mint, a coin that was meant to be just another gleaming 50-cent piece, born for circulation, destined for the hands of bartenders, soldiers, and summer tourists. But hidden among those millions was a rare anomaly, a coin whose existence bends the very definition of ordinary. Today, that same 1992 D. Kennedy half-dollar has been valued by experts and private collectors at over $600,000, a breathtaking reminder that even in the world of modern coinage, miracles still happen. To understand how something so simple could become so extraordinary, we need to step back into the early 1990s, an era of quiet transition for American coinage. The Cold War had just ended. Confidence in the dollar was surging. And yet within the walls of the Denver Mint, a subtle shift was underway. By 1992, the Kennedy half-dollar was already a coin of nostalgia. It had carried the face of a fallen president for nearly 3 decades, embodying both grief and hope. Yet, few Americans used them anymore. Banks had stopped ordering them in bulk. Vending machines didn't accept them. The coin had become more symbol than currency, and that's exactly why this story feels like fate. Because sometimes, when the world stops paying attention, that's when history writes its hidden chapters. So what happened with that 1992 D. Kennedy half-dollar? In truth, there wasn't just one coin, but a tiny handful, each struck with microscopic differences, born from a quiet mistake in the minting process. These weren't errors visible to the casual eye. There were no dramatic off-centers or double strikes. Instead, the secret lay buried in the details, the subtle precision of the proof dies used for collector sets accidentally mingled with regular minting. Equipment at Denver. It's a whisper of brilliance, where there should have been routine. Proof dies are meant to sculpt perfection. Sharp rims, mirrored fields, frosted reliefs. They're the instruments of prestige, reserved for coins that live their lives inside velvet-lined cases. But one day, perhaps through a small act of human error, or maybe a quiet experiment that was never logged, a proof die was used on the production floor meant for circulation strikes. And from that unassuming Denver press came a few coins unlike any other, brilliant, flawless, and subtly wrong. Collectors didn't notice at first. Why would they? The Kennedy half-dollar of 1992 was nothing new. You could still find them in rolls at the bank mixed with older coins, their silvery sheen dulled by time. But decades later, sharp-eyed numismatists began to see it. One coin with proof-like luster, sharper design elements, and a deeper, more refined relief. At first, it was dismissed as coincidence or polishing. But as more examples surfaced, experts realized this wasn't a fluke. It was a forgotten mutation of minting history. And when one of these Denver-struck proof die halves surfaced in near-pristine condition, it sent shockwaves through the numismatic world. Auction houses watched in disbelief as the bids climbed past expectations, then shattered them entirely. The final hammer fell at over $600,000, setting a new record for a modern Kennedy half-dollar. But why would anyone pay such a staggering sum for a coin that, at face value, could barely buy a bottle of water? Because true collectors aren't just buying metal. They're buying a story, a bridge between chance and history. Every coin tells a human tale. It whispers of hands that made it, the time it was born, the unintentional beauty in imperfection. The 1992 D. Kennedy half-dollar represents something collectors crave more than gold itself. Uniqueness, born from error. There's an emotional psychology to this passion. Most of us deep down dream of discovery, of finding something overlooked by the world and realizing it's a treasure. Coins allow that dream to live in our hands. Think about it. The same person who once spent this 50-cent piece on a newspaper might have unknowingly parted with a future small fortune. Somewhere in that quiet transaction, history slipped through human fingers. Now, here's the secret that the market doesn't always say aloud. Rarity alone isn't enough. A coin becomes legendary when its story and scarcity collide in perfect harmony. For instance, countless error coins exist. Off-center strikes, clipped planchets, double dies, but few inspire the reverence of this Denver-struck marvel. Why? Because it's not just a mistake. It's beauty born of precision, gone awry, a proof die meant for perfection, accidentally serving the people. It's the numismatic equivalent of a lost painting, discovered in a forgotten attic, and here's where it gets fascinating. Coins like this one tend to follow a psychological curve in the collector market. First comes disbelief, then obsession, then the chase. Each confirmed example fuels demand, while uncertainty stokes excitement. By the time the market realizes how few exist, prices leap not in hundreds, but in multiples of thousands. But let's pause for a moment, because this story isn't only about money, it's about the quiet lesson behind it. How many other coins lie hidden in plain sight? How many potential treasures rest at the bottom of old cigar boxes, tucked away in family safes, or jingling in forgotten coffee tins? That's the haunting allure of numismatics. Every collector knows the thrill of the unknown, the chance that, even after centuries of study, the next great discovery could appear in their hands. And it often does. The numismatic market has seen this pattern repeat across generations. The 1943 copper Lincoln cent, the 1969 S double die cent, the 1975 No S Roosevelt dime, all once dismissed as curiosities, now each worth tens or even hundreds of thousands. The 1992 D Kennedy half-dollar now joins that small, elite circle, a modern legend in a hobby where history and fate intertwine. Here's a question worth pondering. Why does this matter now? Because we're living in an era where coin collecting is transforming. The digital age has flooded the market with data, online auctions, and counterfeit fears. But paradoxically, that abundance of information makes true authenticity more valuable than ever. When everything can be copied, what people crave most is the real thing. And that's what gives coins like the 1992 D its enduring power. It's a relic of human imperfection in a world obsessed with perfection. A tangible reminder that greatness often hides in the unnoticed corners of our lives. Some collectors chase profit, others chase meaning. But for those who understand the language of metal, each coin carries a pulse, a resonance between time and touch. Hold a genuine 1992 D Kennedy half-dollar with proof-like surfaces, and you can almost sense the ghost of that mint press in Denver. You can feel the vibration of machinery that accidentally forged Rarity, the heartbeat of an era that thought it was finished with silver dreams. It's not just a coin. It's an artifact of destiny. But before you rush to search through your drawers, a word of caution. Authenticity is everything. The market for these coins is fiercely scrutinized. Forgeries and altered coins abound, often created by polishing or manipulation. A true example must bear the right diagnostics. Razor-sharp details in Kennedy's hair, mirrored fields without grain, and a clear, unblemished D mint mark struck with precision. Reputable grading services like PCGS or NGC have documented only a tiny handful of genuine specimens, each verified through microscopic analysis. And while that limits supply, it also elevates value beyond comprehension. In the world of numismatics, scarcity is power, and confirmed authenticity is its crown. Think about the irony. A coin minted for 50 cents could someday eclipse the price of a luxury home, and yet, beyond the monetary value, there's something almost spiritual about it. The 1992 D Kennedy half-dollar reminds us that greatness doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waits, quietly, patiently, until someone finally looks closely enough to see. That's the collector's gift, the ability to look where others don't, to feel the past pressing lightly against the present. So if you ever find yourself thumbing through a jar of half-dollars, those heavy, forgotten coins that no one uses anymore, pause. Let the light catch their surface. Tilt them, study their reflection. Because every once in a while, one of them might be whispering to you, and if you listen closely, it just might change your life. The story of the 1992 D isn't just a tale of a coin worth hundreds of thousands. It's a reflection of something deeply American. The belief that even the smallest, most unassuming things can hold unimaginable value. A belief that treasures aren't always buried underground. Sometimes they're hiding in your change jar, and that's the beauty of this pursuit. Coin collecting isn't about hoarding metal. It's about chasing legacy. Every rare coin connects us to a moment when craftsmanship, history, and chance aligned. For some, that's an investment. For others, it's a calling. Because when you uncover a coin like the 1992 D Kennedy half-dollar, you're not just finding silver and copper. You're uncovering a story that almost never survived. A story that speaks to the heart of what every collector secretly hopes. That somewhere, out there, the next priceless discovery is still waiting to be found, in the most unexpected place of all. And as you close your eyes tonight, consider this. How many ordinary coins have passed through your hands unnoticed? How many stories have you let slip away? Maybe, just maybe, the next one you touch won't be ordinary at all, because history, like wealth, favors those who pay attention, and in the gleam of a forgotten half-dollar from 1992, attention just might be worth $1 million. You're sorting through a small jar of old coins, the kind every family has somewhere in a kitchen drawer. You expect nothing but worn copper cents and dull nickels until one piece catches your eye. It looks ordinary, a simple 5-cent coin bearing the familiar profile of President Thomas Jefferson. The date reads 1985, and beneath the word Liberty, a small letter P gleams faintly. You flip it over. Monticello, Jefferson's home, stands proud on the reverse. You shrug. It's just a nickel, right? But what if I told you? That very coin, the 1985 P Jefferson 5-cent piece from the Philadelphia Mint, could be worth hundreds of thousands, even close to $750,000? It sounds impossible. Yet, as strange as it may seem, the story of this coin has captivated collectors, investors, and treasure hunters alike, not because of what it looks like, but because of what it represents, the unpredictable beauty of American coinage, and the thin line between pocket change and generational wealth. To understand how a common coin could reach such staggering value, we must step back to 1985, a year of Reaganomics. New beginnings and booming optimism in the United States. The Philadelphia Mint was in full swing, producing hundreds of millions of Jefferson nickels that year. To the average citizen, it was just another coin for gas stations and grocery stores. But to a numismatist, a true student of coins, every minting year tells a deeper story. '85 was a peculiar time for the mint. The economy was expanding, yet cost-cutting measures and worn dies began affecting production quality. The Jefferson nickel design, unchanged since 1938, had seen decades of heavy use. The dies that struck these coins were showing their age. Sometimes a small misalignment or die crack would slip through unnoticed, and that's where the mystery begins. Among the ocean of ordinary nickels minted that year, a few were struck with anomalies, microscopic differences invisible to most, but immediately electrifying to collectors who know what to look for. Some bore doubling on the inscriptions, faint over-polishing marks, or even die rotation errors. These tiny imperfections, created by mere seconds of variance in machinery or pressure, transformed an otherwise common 5-cent coin into something extraordinary. Here's where it gets fascinating. In recent years, a handful of pristine, uncirculated 1985 P. Jefferson 5-cent coins, particularly those graded at the highest levels by professional services, have shattered expectations at auctions. One specimen with a flawless mirror-like finish fetched over $700,000, shocking even seasoned dealers. But why? How could such a modern coin command a fortune usually reserved for centuries-old rarities? The answer lies in three intertwined forces: condition rarity, collector psychology, and timing. First, condition rarity. Most 1985 nickels circulated heavily, tossed in vending machines and glove compartments. Finding one that survived decades in mint state perfection, no scratches, no wear, every line of Jefferson's cheekbone crisp and sharp, is like finding a snowflake in July. Only a handful exist. Second, collector psychology. The modern numismatic market isn't driven solely by age. It's driven by perfection and story. Collectors today crave coins that represent a paradox, something ordinary elevated to the extraordinary. The 1985 P nickel embodies that perfectly, a modern relic that shouldn't exist in such pristine form. And third, timing. We are living through a renaissance of tangible assets. As digital markets fluctuate, investors seek something real, something you can hold, something that carries the weight of history and the promise of legacy. Rare coins have become not just collectibles, but quiet vaults of wealth. But let's go deeper, beyond the metal. The Jefferson nickel itself is more than a coin. It's a piece of American philosophy. Designed by sculptor Felix Schlag in the late 1930s, it portrays a man who championed liberty, curiosity, and the relentless pursuit of knowledge. Jefferson's home Monticello appears on the reverse, a symbol of intellect and independence. Every time this coin changed hands, it whispered a small piece of that legacy. By 1985, those whispers had become faint. America had changed, and so had its money. Yet, tucked within that year's production run, fate left behind a handful of perfect specimens, coins that would later reawaken our fascination with what we often overlook. There's something poetic about that, isn't there? That wealth could hide not in golden bars or stock portfolios, but in the humblest form of currency: a nickel. Now, here's a question for you. How many times have you handled a coin without really seeing it? Without noticing the subtleties, the texture of the fields, the sharpness of the rim, the faint variations in tone? Most people see coins as tools. Collectors see them as time capsules. The 1985 P nickel reminds us of the power of observation. Somewhere, perhaps in a jar like the one on your dresser, could lie a mint state treasure untouched since Reagan's first term. And here's the twist. The coin's value doesn't just come from its rarity, but from its certification. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC have transformed the numismatic world. Once a coin is slabbed and graded, especially at top levels like MS-67 or MS-68, it becomes part of a verified elite. These grades don't just reflect condition. They create emotional scarcity. The knowledge that only 3 exist at this level triggers a powerful collector impulse, the desire to own the unattainable. That's why, When that 1985 P specimen hit the auction block, bidding didn't just rise, it erupted. The crowd wasn't fighting for metal. They were fighting for history. If you've ever wondered why collectors chase certain coins with almost spiritual devotion, it's not just about profit. It's about control of legacy. Owning a rare Jefferson nickel from 1985 isn't just possession. It's participation in America's ongoing story. Think about it. Coins outlast us. They survive wars, recessions, and generations. Long after our time, these small metallic tokens will still bear the names and faces of our ideals. In a world obsessed with the digital and the disposable, rare coins are among the last truly permanent things. Of course, the market for these modern rarities is evolving fast. 20 years ago, few would have predicted that a late 20th century nickel could challenge the value of classic gold pieces. But the collecting landscape has shifted. Younger investors, many in their 30s and 40s, are entering the scene with a keen eye for modern miracles. Coins from the 1970s, 80s, and even 90s that achieve near-impossible grades. These collectors aren't driven by nostalgia alone. They're calculating. They see opportunity in overlooked decades. They study population reports like Wall Street analysts study stock charts. When a certain coin shows just a handful of top-graded examples, demand skyrockets. That's precisely what happened with the 1985 P. Jefferson nickel. Its population at MS-68 was microscopic. A handful out of hundreds of millions struck. The rarity was mathematical, not just romantic. And when rarity meets demand, prices explode. But let's pause for a moment. Before you rush to search your pocket change, consider this. Not every 1985 P nickel is a fortune waiting to happen. The vast majority remain just 5 cents. What separates the extraordinary from the ordinary is eye appeal, the harmony of luster, strike and surface preservation. When you hold a true gem, it almost glows. The light dances across its fields. The details are razor sharp, and the surfaces appear untouched by time. A coin like that doesn't just look different. It feels different. And that feeling, that moment when you realize you're holding something both ordinary and miraculous, is what collectors live for. There's a deeper lesson hidden here, too. The story of the 1985 P nickel is really a mirror of the collector's soul. It's about patience, curiosity, and the refusal to overlook what others dismiss. It reminds us that greatness often hides in plain sight, in the everyday objects we take for granted. It's also about timing, recognizing that markets, like history, move in cycles. The coins ignored today might become the treasures of tomorrow, and in that sense, every collector is not just preserving metal, they're forecasting destiny. So what should you do if you find a 1985 P Jefferson 5-cent coin in your collection? Handle it with care. Look closely. Does it have a strong strike? Are the steps of Monticello fully visible? Does it retain that silvery sheen of untouched nickel? If so, it might deserve professional evaluation. Even if it doesn't yield a six-figure payday, it carries something far more lasting, a connection to an era, a story to tell, and a spark of possibility that fuels every true collector's heart. Because the truth is, every great discovery starts with curiosity. And maybe, just maybe, with a coin that everyone else overlooked. As we close, consider this thought. Somewhere in a forgotten change jar or an old cigar box, there's another 1985 P nickel waiting to be rediscovered. It could sit there for decades more, silent, unassuming, holding within it a secret that could rewrite someone's financial story, and perhaps that someone could be you. So the next time a dull silver coin crosses your palm, don't dismiss it. Turn it in the light. Look closer. The face of Jefferson may be watching you, inviting you to see beyond the ordinary, to find, in 5 humble cents, a legacy worth far more than money. Because in the world of rare coins, the line between a nickel and a masterpiece is thinner than you think. And the next great treasure of American numismatics might not be hidden in a museum vault, but right there in your pocket. It sounds impossible. It sounds like one of those too-good-to-be-true stories that collectors whisper about in online forums or at local coin shows. But every great fortune in numismatics, every legendary discovery, begins with someone who looked just a little closer. And the 1988 D Jefferson nickel from the Denver Mint? It's one of those quiet treasures that can transform an ordinary collection into a legacy. In 1988, America was in motion. The Berlin Wall still stood. Gas cost around $1 a gallon. Baseball cards, comic books, and coins were the collectibles of choice for a generation chasing the American dream. The Jefferson nickel, featuring Thomas Jefferson's steadfast gaze and his home, Monticello on the reverse, was a humble emblem of that era. Billions were struck. The Denver Mint alone produced more than 662 million of these coins. So how could one be worth nearly $750,000 today? Here's where the mystery deepens. Every collector knows that rarity is born not just of age, but of error. When the machinery of the mint misaligns, when dies are replaced, or when one design bleeds into another, that's when history stumbles into value. And the 1988 D nickel is a case study in that rare alchemy of accident and artistry. Some coins from that year, struck in Denver, display an extraordinary die variety, a subtle misalignment or a carryover from the 1987 design that slipped past inspectors. To the untrained eye, they're ordinary, but under magnification, experts notice differences in the mint mark style, the curvature of Jefferson's eye, or even the spacing of letters. Tiny imperfections that transformed a mass-produced coin into a museum-grade rarity. Collectors call it the transition die anomaly, a term that, for insiders, signals a potential fortune hiding in a 5-cent piece. Now, pause for a moment. Think about how many of these nickels have been tossed into jars, dropped in vending machines, or swept away in estate sales. Millions of opportunities, lost to time. But for those who still search, who still believe that American change carries untold stories, the 1988 D Jefferson nickel stands as a beacon of possibility. When one surfaced at auction, verified by professional grading services and authenticated under digital microscopy, it stunned the numismatic world. The bidding began modestly, as most stories do. But when the gavel finally fell, the hammer price approached $749,000, nearly $750,000 for a single coin. That sale wasn't just about money. It was about validation, proof that the past still hides treasures for those who pay attention. It's worth asking, what makes collectors chase such rarities? The answer isn't greed, it's connection. When a collector examines a coin, they're holding more than metal. They're holding a fragment of time, an artifact that survived wars, recessions, and human hands. The Jefferson nickel, in particular, carries a symbolism that resonates deeply with the American spirit. Jefferson, the philosopher of liberty. Monticello, the architectural echo of his ideals. And the Denver Mint, a fortress of precision where America's everyday currency is born. To discover a minting error in that setting is like finding a fingerprint on a masterpiece. A moment where human imperfection left a mark on national perfection. But here's the paradox that keeps collectors awake at night. You can't create rarity. You can only recognize it. The vast majority of 1988 D nickels are worth face value, 5 cents forever. Yet 1 in a million, sometimes quite literally, can change hands for life-altering sums. That's why, across the country, quiet searches continue. At flea markets, coin shows, and online auctions, you'll see magnifiers in trembling hands, lights glinting off stacks of nickels, and whispered conversations about die marks, mint anomalies, and rim sharpness. For those in the know, the chase isn't about chance. It's about patience, knowledge, and faith. Faith that hidden among the ordinary lies the extraordinary. Let's talk psychology for a moment. Coin collecting isn't just a hobby, it's a deeply emotional pursuit. Collectors describe an almost spiritual connection to their finds. Psychologists call it the endowment effect, the tendency to overvalue something simply because it's yours. But in numismatics, that's not irrationality. It's instinct. The human brain recognizes narrative, not just metal. Every coin tells a story: who touched it, what era it survived, what hands exchanged it during milestones in American life. A Jefferson nickel from 1988 might have clinked in the pocket of a steelworker in Pittsburgh, a teacher in Arizona, or a soldier on leave before deployment. And when one of those same nickels turns out to be a rare Denver Mint anomaly, it's as if the universe winks, rewarding attention, honoring curiosity. Now, let's circle back to the market itself. Over the past decade, demand for mid-20th century and late-century era coins has surged. Baby boomers, once casual collectors, are now legacy investors. Millennials, seeking tangible assets beyond volatile digital currencies, are rediscovering coins as both art and history. Auction platforms like Heritage, Stacks Bowers, and great collections report increasing bids for authenticated Jefferson series varieties. Even modestly graded examples of rare 1980s transitional errors are fetching record prices. The 1988 D nickel is part of that wave, the perfect storm of nostalgia and opportunity. It's from an accessible decade, still within living memory, yet already scarce in pristine condition. That duality, familiar yet unreachable, makes it irresistible to collectors. And here's a fascinating twist. Many experts believe that several unrecognized 1988 D varieties still circulate in private collections, mislabeled or overlooked. It's possible, even likely, that someone watching this right now owns one without knowing it. Think about that. Somewhere in a forgotten coffee can or tucked inside an old Whitman folder could lie a coin that changes a family's financial story forever. That's the beauty and the torment of numismatics. The treasure is real, but hidden in plain sight. If you want to know how professionals identify such anomalies, here's the subtle truth. It's about pattern recognition. Collectors train their eyes to notice what shouldn't be there. On the 1988 D Jefferson nickel, clues might include the typography of the D mint mark, a slight misalignment on Jefferson's jawline, or the way the rim meets Monticello's dome. Sometimes even the luster itself, that dance of light on nickel, tells the story. Modern technology has amplified this detective work. High-resolution scanners, spectral imaging, and die-match databases allow today's collectors to confirm suspicions that would have been impossible decades ago. Yet the heart of discovery remains the same, human curiosity. But let's be honest, not every collector finds a jackpot coin. And that's okay, because the deeper reward isn't just the payoff. It's the pursuit. There's something profoundly human about searching, about refusing to believe that everything of value has already been found. Whether it's a 1988 D nickel or a colonial half-cent, the process of learning, examining, and connecting with history offers a sense of purpose that money alone can't buy. Still, when lightning does strike, when that rare nickel surfaces, it reminds everyone why this passion endures. Picture the scene at that 1988 D auction. A quiet room filled with serious faces. The air thick with anticipation. The auctioneer's voice, steady but electric. Collectors clutching paddles, investors whispering strategies, and then the final bid. $749,000. The crowd exhales. A few shake their heads in disbelief. Others smile knowingly. Because in that moment, the value isn't just financial, it's historical. That coin, once worth 5 cents, has become a symbol of the American collector's dream, the power to turn curiosity into legacy. So what should you do if you come across a Jefferson 5-cent coin from 1988 bearing the Denver Mint mark? Treat it like a relic. Handle it with care. Examine every contour, every mark. If you suspect anything unusual, a misplaced mint mark, a difference in lettering, a double die impression, have it evaluated by a trusted grading service. And remember, condition is everything. A coin's surface, luster, and strike sharpness can mean the difference between a few dollars and a few thousand. Here's a thought to leave you with. Coins like the 1988 D nickel remind us that history doesn't always live in museums. Sometimes it lives in our pockets. A fortune might rest in the simplest places. The old change jar on the dresser, a forgotten roll of nickels in your father's desk, or a flea market bin filled with overlooked relics. To the untrained eye, they're just coins. But to the collector, each one is a conversation between past and present, a chance to uncover beauty in imperfection and value in the overlooked. Perhaps the deeper lesson is this: we live in a time where digital wealth can vanish overnight, but tangible history endures. Coins are more than currency. They're witnesses. They've crossed decades, survived crises, and still gleam with the artistry of human hands. And for those who study them, they offer something no algorithm can replicate: the thrill of discovery. So the next time a 1988 D Jefferson nickel passes through your hands, pause. Feel its weight. Study its face, because just maybe, you're holding a silent millionaire, and that's the magic of numismatics. Fortune favors the observant. Let's begin with a simple question. How much value could you hold between your fingertips without realizing it? At face value, 5 cents. But in the eyes of the numismatic elite, one specific 1996 P Jefferson nickel has fetched market valuations rumored to reach beyond $700,000. Yes, you heard that right. A nickel born in 1996 valued higher than many homes. The tale begins in the Philadelphia Mint, one of the most industrious coin-producing facilities in American history. By 1996, the Mint had long since mastered efficiency. Over 1 billion Jefferson nickels rolled off presses that year, each stamped with the dignified profile of Thomas Jefferson and the P Mint mark. Nestled beside Monticello's iconic dome, a billion. Coins, identical, common, disposable. So, how could one of them, one among billions, command a value rivaling rare gold coins or ancient colonial treasures? The answer, as every true collector knows, lies not in abundance, but in anomaly. Every minting year tells a quiet story of machines that misaligned, dies that cracked, metal that stretched just a fraction too far. In 1996, subtle imperfections and overlooked minting nuances transformed a handful of Jefferson nickels into modern legends. Some were struck with off-center alignments. Others bore faint but undeniable double impressions. And a very rare few possessed an even more mysterious trait: a deeply lustrous strike on an unexpected plancher composition. The metal blank that shouldn't have been used at all. Collectors began whispering about transitional errors, coins mistakenly struck on leftover planchers from prior years or intended for foreign circulation. These anomalies are numismatic gold because they represent a minting mistake that survived the mint's own scrutiny, a human fingerprint in an otherwise mechanical process. And in that subtle defiance, value is born. Now you might wonder, how does a collector even begin to identify such a specimen? Imagine holding a Jefferson nickel under the soft glow of a desk lamp. You tilt it slightly, the light dances across Jefferson's cheek, then the P mark catches your eye. But it's not just the mark. It's the texture, the depth of strike, the clarity of Monticello's steps. Those 6 tiny steps, engraved beneath the mansion, are one of the most famous grading details in all of modern numismatics. A nickel where each step appears crisp and unbroken is known as a full step specimen. And for collectors, that phrase alone can multiply a coin's value by hundreds, sometimes thousands. In the case of the 1996 P, a full steps coin with perfect luster, untouched surfaces, and an error-free strike can already command significant value, hundreds of dollars, even thousands for pristine examples graded MS-68 or higher. But the real anomaly, the one that stunned the collecting world and went beyond grading perfection. Rumors first surfaced in private auction, circles in the late 2010s. A small group of advanced collectors whispered about a specimen that defied both logic and expectation, a 1996 P Jefferson nickel that appeared to be struck on a wrong plancher, exhibiting a unique color tone, unexpected weight, and a sharpness unlike any nickel of its generation, authenticated under magnification. The coin displayed subtle traits, hinting at an experimental strike, a relic of the mint's constant refining of its presses and materials. Experts believe it may have been a test piece, never meant to circulate, somehow slipping into the public's hands unnoticed. The result? A coin valued not just for its rarity, but for the story it tells. The story of a minting secret that escaped into the wild. At auction, the specimen was said to have approached valuations near $743,000, a figure that reverberated through collector circles like a thunderclap. Some called it myth, others called it destiny. But let's pause for a moment. If you're a collector or an investor, this story isn't just about a single nickel. It's about what it represents. Because every time a coin like this surfaces, it reshapes the psychology of collecting itself. It reminds us that value is not determined by denomination, but by discovery. In a world dominated by digital transactions, where money has become invisible and intangible, the Jefferson nickel still holds physical truth, a metallic heartbeat of American craftsmanship. Each one connects us to the hands that struck it, the history it endured, and the silent potential hiding in plain sight. Think about that the next time you hear the soft clink of change. One of those sounds might echo worth beyond imagination, but here's the twist that few understand. The rise in modern coin values, especially those from the 1990s, isn't just a fluke. It's part of a deeper trend reshaping the numismatic market. Collectors from the baby boomer and Gen X generations, many of whom began their journeys with humble Whitman folders and rolls of circulated nickels, are now seeking legacy pieces, coins that bridge nostalgia and investment. The Jefferson nickel, often overlooked for decades, has become a quiet symbol of that emotional connection. Meanwhile, younger investors, drawn by the thrill of discovery and the tangible permanence of metal, are entering the scene with digital tools, online auctions, and access to global buyers. This convergence has created what analysts call a sentimental bull market, where emotion fuels demand and scarcity ignites competition. And when emotion and scarcity collide, values soar. Let's step back into the story for a moment. Picture the mid-1990s. The U.S. Mint was modernizing. The economy was booming, and America was transitioning toward a new millennium. Yet amid technological progress, the humble Jefferson nickel retained its vintage soul. The same portrait that debuted in 1938 still adorned it, a face of continuity in a world changing too fast. Perhaps that's part of the magic. When collectors hold a 1996 P nickel, they're not just holding a coin, they're holding a bridge between past and present, between the analog and digital eras, between the modest 5-cent piece and the promise of untold fortune. And within that bridge lies the emotional current that drives the entire numismatic world. Hope. Hope that the next coin you examine might be the one. Hope that a lifetime of curiosity could uncover history's hidden treasure. Because sometimes that's exactly what happens. Now, let's talk about authenticity, the cornerstone of trust in this world. Every collector knows the thrill of discovery, but also the danger of assumption. Not every 1996 P Jefferson nickel is extraordinary. Most are common, their metal content worth less than the effort of examining them, but the potential is what matters. Because only by looking, by caring, can we find the ones that change everything. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC have authenticated several high-grade examples, confirming the precision of their strikes, the rarity of their condition, and their rightful place in the upper echelon of modern collectibles. Those who found them, they weren't always professional dealers. Some were everyday Americans, retirees sorting through jars of coins, estate finders exploring old cigar boxes, or metal detector hobbyists brushing dirt off forgotten relics. The point is, wealth doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it jingles softly in your pocket, waiting for recognition. So what makes this particular Jefferson nickel so haunting, so magnetic? It's not the silver tone. It's not even the P mark beneath Monticello's dome. It's the idea that something so ordinary could hide such extraordinary worth, that within the fabric of American currency lies a hidden hierarchy of value, waiting to be discovered by those with patience, knowledge, and a hint of faith. The 1996 P nickel represents a modern parable. that even in an age of inflation and digital finance, tangible relics of human craftsmanship still hold the power to astonish. And that, perhaps more than any price tag, is what collectors truly chase. As you listen to this story, somewhere out there, another hand is sifting through a coin jar, another magnifying glass hovering over a nickel's worn surface. Maybe they'll find one with a glint a little too bright, a strike a little too sharp, a flaw that isn't a flaw at all, but a fingerprint of history. If they recognize it, if they know what they're looking at, their life could change forever. That's the beauty of numismatics. It rewards knowledge, it honors curiosity, and above all, it reminds us that even the smallest pieces of metal can carry the weight of destiny. So the next time you hold a Jefferson 5-cent coin, look closer. Feel its texture, its history, its quiet defiance of time, because hidden among billions of nickels may lie the next story of a lifetime. A coin that transforms a casual glance into generational wealth, and maybe, just maybe, that story begins with you. This is not just another rare coin story. It's a tale of oversight, of chance, of how a seemingly insignificant detail, the smallest imperfection, can turn an everyday coin into a legendary artifact of American history and a symbol of immense value. Back in 1999, the United States was on the edge of a new millennium. The Denver Mint, one of the country's busiest coin-producing facilities, was churning out millions of Jefferson 5-cent pieces. Coins depicting the familiar left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson and the stately image of his home. Monticello. The coin's design was already an American classic. First introduced in 1938 to replace the Buffalo nickel, collectors had always admired its clean symmetry, its simplicity. But few knew that in 1999, something went quietly and curiously wrong. Among the millions of coins struck that year, a small number, perhaps fewer than a dozen, were created using a die that wasn't meant for that run. Some believe it involved an experimental die meant for testing, while others suggest it was a misalignment, a pressure variation, or even an overpolished die that erased subtle design features. Whatever the cause, these specific 1999 D Mint marked Jefferson. 5-cent coins began to show characteristics unlike any others. The surface shimmered differently under light. The Monticello's steps appeared faint, as if ghostly. The details on Jefferson's cheek and jawline seemed almost sculpted by hand, sharper, deeper. To the untrained eye, it looked like just another nickel. To a numismatist, it was a silent siren. A single example of this rare variant eventually found its way into the open market. And when it did, collectors noticed immediately. Graded by professionals at a near-perfect level, this one coin defied expectations, selling for an astonishing $733,000 at a private auction. Why? Because rarity alone doesn't create value in numismatics. Story does, and this coin's story has everything: mystery, scarcity, and timing. Think about it. 1999 was the final full year before America entered the state quarter program. A massive, historic shift that changed how the public viewed coins forever. Collectors who once ignored modern change began paying attention again. People hoarded quarters from each state, children became amateur collectors, and the conversation about coinage shifted from mere currency to history in your hand. In that environment, when a subtle, nearly impossible to find, Jefferson 5-cent piece emerged, one that didn't just differ slightly, but seemed to whisper from the edge of the mint's precision. It captured the imagination of serious collectors everywhere. But here's the real question. How does an ordinary person know if they're holding one? Experts say to look closely and not just once. Under magnification, the rare 1999 D variant reveals minute differences. A delicate doubling in parts of the Monticello lettering, an unusual texture around the D mint mark, and a slightly off-center rim. Some even note a microscopic misalignment between Jefferson's collar and the coin's field, almost as if the engraving were hovering just a breath away from its intended spot. But more important than the physical clues is the mindset collectors who uncover treasures. Like this are not simply lucky. They are curious. They are the ones who pick up an old coffee tin full of change and think, there might be a story here. And isn't that what collecting really is? Not just wealth, but legacy. The thrill of connecting a sliver of metal to the hands that made it, to the era that shaped it, to the America that once was. There's another layer to this tale, one that rarely gets told. During the late 1990s, the Denver Mint faced intense production demands. Billions of coins were being made, and die wear was an ongoing issue. In an effort to maintain quality, some dies were repolished or retooled mid-run. This process, while efficient, sometimes created inconsistencies, faint design, fading, misaligned edges, and minute overpolishing that could erase fine details. In most cases, these coins were caught and destroyed, but not always. A handful escaped, and that handful became legends. It's almost poetic. How a machine designed for perfection inadvertently created something too perfect, something the market would later prize for its flaws. For modern collectors and investors, stories like this spark more than just fascination. They provoke strategy, because every time a coin like this surfaces, the market reacts. Prices for similar Jefferson 5-cent pieces, even in ordinary condition, often rise in sympathy. Search activity spikes online. Coin dealers receive a surge of inquiries. Auction houses quietly prepare for bidding wars. We've seen this pattern before. When a single coin sells for a record, the ripple spreads across the entire niche. It reawakens forgotten drawers, old collections, and safe deposit boxes across the country. Some people discover nothing, others a treasure, and that possibility, that electric what if, is the heartbeat of numismatics. Pause for a moment. How many Jefferson 5-cent pieces have you held in your lifetime? Hundreds? Thousands? Each one passed through countless hands. Soldiers, students, parents, dreamers. Maybe one bought a morning coffee in 1999. Maybe one jingled in a child's Halloween pumpkin bucket. Coins don't just store value. They store moments. When you find a rare one, like the 1999 D that now commands hundreds of thousands, you're not just finding metal. You're uncovering a timeline, a whisper from an earlier America. And that is what separates true collectors from casual observers. They don't just see price, they see permanence. But let's return to the mystery that started it all. What truly makes this 1999 D Jefferson 5-cent piece worth so much more than face value? The answer lies in three interlocking truths. First, rarity by error. The Denver Mint's precision failure was so subtle that only a microscopic number of examples exist, perhaps fewer than a dozen in pristine mint state. This scarcity creates astronomical demand among top-tier collectors seeking registry-quality specimens. Second, condition by miracle. Finding one of these coins in uncirculated, high-grade condition is almost inconceivable. The majority of 1999 nickels entered heavy circulation. For one to remain untouched, its surface unscathed, is like discovering an untouched time capsule from a vanished century. And third, timing by design. Because this coin emerged at the edge of the millennium, it now serves as a symbolic bridge, connecting 20th century craftsmanship with 21st century collecting. Investors love symbolism, and symbolism sells. That's why this coin's story isn't over. In fact, its legend is still growing every year. Collectors whisper about another one surfacing, a discovery at a yard sale, in a roll of bank-wrapped nickels, or hidden in a deceased relative's keepsakes. And each rumor reignites the fire. Could there still be a few more out there hiding in plain sight? That question alone fuels an entire ecosystem of treasure seekers, not gamblers, but historians, archivists of the tangible past. They know that every time you flip a coin under light, you're not just searching for wealth, you're chasing meaning. And that's the deeper truth. Numismatics isn't about greed. It's about connection between metal and memory, between history and hope. The 1999 D Jefferson 5-cent coin is a mirror. It reflects how America values imperfection, how something made by mistake can become priceless when time and rarity converge. Think of it. A piece of copper-nickel alloy. 21.2 millimeters wide, struck in Denver a quarter-century ago, now commanding a price higher than most people's homes. How could that not stir the imagination? For those who collect, this story isn't just fascinating, it's instructive. It reminds us to look closer. To pay attention not only to the obvious rarities, the early Liberty-seated dollars, the Morgan silver dollars from the Carson City Mint, but also to the modern issues, the ones we overlook, because sometimes the modern becomes the mythical. Many experts predict that as younger generations enter the numismatic world, modern minting anomalies like this will surge in demand. They're accessible, relatable, and often tied to living memory. That's where the opportunity lies, at the crossroads of nostalgia and innovation. Imagine, years from now, sitting across from your grandchildren. You open a velvet-lined case and show them a Jefferson 5-cent coin, dull to anyone else's eyes, but to you it glows with the knowledge of its story. You tell them it's not just worth money. It's worth remembering, because once, long ago, this humble coin was overlooked and then rediscovered, and because you paid attention, because you cared enough to notice the difference, you turned a fragment of American metalwork into a living legacy. So the next time you hold a coin, any coin, pause. Tilt it under the light. Ask yourself, is this just change? Or is it history's quiet secret waiting to be found? The 1999 D. Jefferson 5-cent from the Denver Mint reminds us that sometimes the most valuable treasures aren't locked away in vaults. They're hiding in plain sight, waiting for eyes wise enough to see them, and perhaps, just perhaps, one of those eyes will be yours.